Welcome to another insightful episode of Grandma Says. And here's Grandma.
Building a happy home with happy kids requires three things: schedules, boundaries, and foundations. I've already covered foundations in other podcasts, so today we'll start exploring schedules. So, in this Grandma Says podcast, we're going to explore what a schedule is, what it does, and the impact it has on the overall individual. I'll provide breakdowns based on age and subsequent podcasts, but for this one, let's just do an overview. So with that, let's get started. As an overview, I want you to picture the three things mentioned as a house, the foundation being the floor of the house. This is where the trust is built, knowing you can walk, run, slide, skate, that you're still safe, you're protected, and you're loved, all makes for the beginnings of a happy home. So that's the floor, the foundation. The boundaries would be the walls, and we'll cover that in other podcasts. Now, the schedules determine the size of your house, how well you work together collectively in your home so that you can all enjoy sharing the home together. Now, surprisingly, when it comes to developing you as a person and your little people who you are trying to raise to adulthood, your schedule is what determines and develops a person's emotional health. Yeah, I know you're not going to hear about that in psychology class, but it is true. Think about yourself as a person for a moment. The only thing that you really control is your time, and your schedules are used to manage that time. Your time determines your experiences, and your experiences determine who and what you become or who or what you already are. Life is the equivalent of experiences, as in your series of experiences determine your life. So ultimately, whatever you spend time doing, that's who you are. That's who you become. That becomes your reputation. So if we put all the puzzle pieces together, time is your most important asset, and it is the only thing that you actually control. So if you're sharing your time, then you are sharing it because whoever or whatever you're sharing your time with, that determines for yourself what is most important to you. Okay. Let me try to break that down a little bit. If you're the kind of person who spends almost all your time working to where people know you as a workaholic, then what's important to you is your job. If you're known as somebody who's always making music, then what's important to you is music. So what are you known for? At some point, you're a musician. If you're a workaholic, you're known for whatever job you do, because that's how people are going to view you based on what you do, not necessarily who you are. So let's look at how does this apply to kids and family, because it's not the title or the role that you carry, it's what you do, not necessarily who you are. So let's expand that a little bit. If you're the dad, that's supposed to be your title in your household. However, if you're never home, and when you do come home, all you do is fuss and complain, your children don't see you as dad. They're going to see you as the disciplinarian, the grouch, the meanie, the, oh my God, here he comes. Everybody pretend to be asleep, because it's what you do that determines how they're going to respond to you, not who you are in terms of the role that you play. You just being dad does not mean you have secured your place as the authoritative head of household and everyone's going to listen to you. No, it's not. I know on TV they make it look that way. That's not how it works in real life. The way that you gain that authority, the way that you get your children to do what you want, you would have to develop that through those three things that we've been discussing. So it's not the title, it's not the role, it's what you do that determines who you are in the eyes of your children. As the leader of your household, you also have to set the vision for your household. You're in charge. Now, because you're in charge, you are going to have the largest effect on your household overall, which means it's a good time to start doing a little bit of self-examining, because when you become a parent, you have to understand you're getting ready to influence the next generation of your family. The children you're raising right now determine where your family line is now going to go. There may be things you need to deal with within yourself. And if it's serious enough, I suggest that you may seek therapy. Because look at it this way. If you're in charge of a household, but you're still the scared little boy or you're the sad little girl and you never dealt with that, this is going to come across in your parenting at some point. And once it shows up, it may either, I really can't say it's an either or, it's going to affect your parenting. Most of the time, unfortunately, it will do so in a negative way. And we can get into that in other podcasts, but I just want you to be aware that if you have issues that are affecting your ability to control your household and to work with your kids, you may want to hit the pause button on your parenting at the moment. And I don't mean stop parenting and run off. I mean, rather than trying to influence everyone around you, take a second for yourself and get therapy, read a book, find out more about you, and then you can reapproach a situation with a clearer mindset. So let's look at some of the behaviors that we see in people so that I can show you how scheduling has to do with it. Sometimes people develop irrational or debilitating fears and issues that can prevent them from living the kind of life they want to live. And this behavior can often roll over into how you're teaching your child or your toddler to live or how to address things in life. So when you wind up dealing with people who may seem a little irrational or unstable, a lot of that comes from the parent didn't have their emotional selves intact. And then they're trying to teach a child how to handle their emotional selves. And neither party is learning the positives from each other because neither party is at a level where they can share their emotions on a proper level. So let's look at this this is a kind of a hard topic. So I'm trying to make it so that you catch on without it sounding like, what the hell? Okay. So let's look at schedules and emotions and how they apply. All right. Let's start with something we've all seen, which is a tantrum. Toddlers and tantrums. Most people look at it and say, well, that's what kids do. Well, actually, it's not. The children that are throwing tantrums usually throw tantrums because they're not feeling hurt. They don't think somebody's listening to them. And so the only way to get a person's attention is to throw a tantrum. Now, the same child, when they get older, their teachers will say, oh, they have anger issues. They need to go to anger management training. Well, again, even as an older person, they're still having a tantrum. They're just doing it in a different way because they're still not being heard or they don't feel as though they're being heard. Now we get to the very grown adult who is labeled as abusive. Why would someone be labeled as abusive? Because they're still throwing tantrums. Now they're just doing it against somebody's face with their fist. It's the same behavior. The behavior itself has not changed. It's now applied to a different thing. In a tantrum, you may break a toy. When you're a teenager, you might wreck the car or tear up your room. As an adult, you may attack a person. It's the same thing. And most of the time, it comes from the feeling of not being heard, not being listened to. And so therefore, you're acting out or you have become abusive. That means that there's a communication problem. It doesn't mean the person doesn't know how to communicate. The person who's an abuser can be an eloquent speaker, but they still just don't know how to communicate. They're not in touch with their emotions enough to handle those emotions and then communicate it properly, which has now led to behavior that is not acceptable. Now, we can do the same thing with almost any other emotion. Somebody who is considered possessive as an adult, more than likely they were clingy as a baby and shy as a child. Somebody who has experienced a high level of fear, they're a scared child, therefore they're clingy. Now, as an adult, they become possessive. You can't leave them for more than 15 minutes without them having a freak out episode. And that started because they didn't deal with being afraid as a child. So where does all this emotion come from? It comes from time. And that's what your schedules are all about. It's about time. When you have an infant and your infant wakes up alone all the time, your infant wakes up and they never know where they are. The smells are different. The noises are different. The room is different. The voices are different. The faces are different. Then you're developing a child who's going to have issues of being afraid. And those fears grow as the child grows, especially if there's never an end to it. As in, at no point does somebody make it so now they have a schedule where they are stable. So with a stable schedule, then the child is not going to wake up at different times in different places to different sounds in different rooms and different faces. They're on a schedule. So they know every time they wake up, they're either going to smell the same blanket, they're going to hear the same music, they're going to hear the same voices, they're going to recognize the same room, it's the same size light bulb, etc. And this would give them some level of stability. Without that, what you wind up with is a constant change from one thing to the next. Now we're talking about infancy, but then this can roll over into toddlerhood. Kids who have different babysitters every week and they go to different daycares during the week. One day they're with grandma, the next day they're with the in-laws, the next day they're with their auntie. This type of instability that goes with the lack of a solid schedule is what can develop those types of fears. Now we roll that over into how does this grow as they get older? They become clingy. Every time mommy leaves, they're having a fit. They're grabbing on her clothes. They're scared out of their mind. They have no idea what comes next. And then this, of course, leads to them not speaking up for themselves as they go through puberty. So now people mistreat them. They say nothing because they're afraid. Fear is often associated with someone being shy, but shyness usually comes from a type of underlying fear. I don't mean terror, by the way. I don't mean people who are abused. I'm talking about general fear, the idea that, well, I don't know if I should say anything. What if that person leaves me with somebody else? And that started from infancy. And then by the time they're adults, that's when you get these overly possessive, clingy people who, oh my God, if you don't text them every 5 minutes, they're going to lose their mind. It all began because they didn't have a schedule when they were a baby. Yay. Okay. Hopefully that made some sense. Now, not to get this to go too far, I'm going to set this up. What I just told you about is in our first section. I'm going to pick up from here and get into response to issues, as in how does your emotional stability that is based on your schedules as a young child, how does that affect how you respond when you get older to issues and circumstances? Because believe it or not, all of these things go hand in hand, and it determines what kind of lifestyle you're going to have with your children. Because remember earlier we talked about the foundation leads to the obedience. The scheduling deals with the emotion. So now let's put that into one package. Your child may obey you, but how they obey you is based on their emotion. So let's say that you tell your child, I want you to go over there and get the bag of flour and put it in the cart. Well, your child can walk over nicely, pick up the flour, put it in the cart, and then stand there and be a good little boy or girl. Or your child can stomp over to the shelf, grab the flour by one side, one of the edges of the package, and then throw it into the cart and send flour flying everywhere. They were still obedient. But their emotions just let you know that something is still not right in River City. We're going to get more into that in the next podcast to understand how does the schedule now affect the emotion? Why would a child do that? Well, any number of reasons. They could be afraid of you. They could be tired. It could be the wrong time of day for you to have them out in that store. It could be that you told them something 2 days ago and you forgot and they're mad about it and they don't know how to explain it. So we'll pick that up in the next podcast. But as for this one, that's all I have to say about that. And I'll see you in the next podcast.
Grandma Says has been a Boss production.